Welcome back to Giants Latest. I know we are all still sad and frustrated and upset about the loss against the Cowboys because it obviously should have been a win. But there's a lot of good that came out of this game, and I want to flip the page now and talk through some of the good things that happened because I think it shows a lot of things. Number one, that they can make changes from one week to another and they can improve that quickly. A major beef that I had with this coaching staff is that last week after every single game it was, oh, well, we had a good week of practice. We had a great week. The week went perfect. Great week of practice. And then all of a sudden the game, it's like no one's ever played football before. So this was the first time that we finally saw from one week to another that things drastically changed. And in this league, this is what you need to win games. So I'm really optimistic about that. Number two, we saw the offensive line take a gigantic step forward. Number three, Russell Wilson, huge step forward. Everything seemed to be clicking with this offense. And again, the fact that it happened so quickly, we went from watching a Giants team that had a plethora of issues. No offensive line play, no run blocking, no pass blocking, a quarterback who looked absolutely horrified, wide receivers who couldn't get open, dropped balls. What else? Couldn't get into the red zone. Then when they finally get into the red zone, they still can't score a touchdown. Everything that went wrong last week could have went wrong, and they just couldn't snap themselves out of it. Fast forward to this week, you have a team that puts up 37 points. You have a team that converts when they get to the red zone. You have a team that can throw the ball down the field, who has explosive plays, who can run block okay, who can pass block well enough, who shot themselves in the foot 100 times over with 150 plus yards and penalties, and they still put up 37 points. So they do a lot of things wrong. We all know this, but the offense, the fact that they were able to go, like I said, from one week to the next and make whatever changes they made to put up 37 points is very impressive. James Hudson, despite getting 4 penalties on one drive that cost them 40 yards and then some, the offense still moved the ball down the field. They still could have, if they could have been a little bit better in the red zone, maybe they could have scored a touchdown there. So then James Hudson comes off the field, Marcus Bowe steps right in. Like he's been doing this his whole life. Like he's always played left tackle in the NFL. Not perfect by any means. Hell of a lot better than anyone else who's played left tackle that's not named Andrew Thomas for the Giants in the last 5 years. Unbelievable. And then, John Michael Schmitz in the interior offensive line, look, they have things to work out. Their run blocking was still not great, but they were able to block enough to give Russ Wilson time. Russell Wilson looked like the quarterback that we all hoped he was going to be, the quarterback that won them Seattle a Super Bowl, the quarterback who's calm, collected in the pocket, who throws a perfect moon ball, who's accurate, who takes the yards and runs when he can. That is the Russell Wilson that, as we're watching last week, we're like, oh my God, this is not what I signed up for. So, the offense was really clicking in every way. Again, run blocking, not perfect. I think they had less than 100 yards, again, rushing, but still they're able to move the ball in other ways, right? One thing that I said last week is that the offensive line and this offense as a whole, you cannot be bad at everything. You can't get penalties. You can't not run block. You can't not pass block, and you can't be bad in the red zone. You can't have all of those things happen and then expect to be a good offense. It's not going to happen. And the fact that this week, look, the red zone is still a problem. Okay, we know that the red zone play calling is concerning, and the fact that they can't seem to score when they get there is not good. 1 for 5 in the red zone is out of control. But they were able to, even though they couldn't fix that in the moment, right? And they couldn't convert in those red zone situations, they still were able to have explosive plays that help them get to the red zone and score touchdowns. So again, there has to be some complementary football, right? And we finally saw that on offense. We haven't seen that in a long time. We have a quarterback who threw for 450 yards. They put up 4 touchdowns. Malik Neighbors, 167 yards and 2 touchdowns with 9 receptions. Wan'Dale Robinson had a career high 142 yards and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors now leads the NFL since 1970 with the most catches in NFL history in the first 18 or 17 games of his career. You know who's number 2? OBJ. Did you guess right? Probably. So, we have this stud wide receiver. We have Wan'Dale Robinson, who made some great catches on third down, some great third down conversions that helped them move the ball. How about Theo Johnson, who went 1 for 4 last week and looked awful? This week goes 3 for 4 for 34 yards. And in the grand scheme of things, 34 yards is not a big number to be super excited about, but he caught almost every ball that came his way. He converted the yardage when he needed to, made plays when he needed to, got open so he was a target for the quarterback. This is all stuff that was not happening just 1 week ago. So, a lot of good things with this offense. Cam Scatteroo? One of the other things that I said, give me more scat. And what do we see? A scat with a 24-yard run. The next play ends up in a touchdown. So they still struggle to run block, but still get chunk plays. Also in the air, the Giants, for the first time in God knows how long, had 8+ 20-yard passes through the air. Explosive plays should win you football games. They should. But we have a defensive problem, which we're not going to discuss today. But again, a lot of good that came out of this game. And I know we're all so disappointed because we should have won that game. We should have. There's no excuse. But there was a lot of good that came out of it. And hopefully, again, things that they can build on. So I hope that we're all going into week 3 thinking this. If Andrew Thomas isn't healthy, at least we have Marcus Bowe. Week 3, JMS with that interior O-line, hopefully going to step it up a little bit. Jermaine Illuminor did a nice job. Overall, they did great in the pass blocking. They got to step it up in the run blocking a little bit. Those penalties, unacceptable. And with James Hudson off the field, we should see less of them. But he's not the only one that committed penalties. Need to be cleaned up on both sides of the ball. But overall, a good showing from this offense. Again, not perfect. But the fact that last week, they couldn't run block, they couldn't pass block, and they had a shitload of penalties and couldn't do anything. For this week, Marcus Bowe steps in when James Hudson is very clearly screwing them over, steps in and plays fantastic right off the bat. He played 51 snaps, did an incredible job. So, I think it's 1 week, right? And we all have our week 1 overreaction like every other team's fan base, right? The Dolphins, we're done, it's over. The Colts, oh my God, Daniel Jones, outlier. The Bengals won, oh, we're going to be fine. Now Joe Burrow's injured. The Denver Broncos lose to Daniel Jones and the Colts. Like, the NFL is what it is. And every week is a different ball game. So I think that, I think if the Giants win this game, we're obviously feeling differently, but I think the reality is that every week things can change, and they can change for the better or they can change for the worse. But I think for the Giants, the fact that they made that drastic leap, especially on offense, in 1 week behind an offensive line who still struggled to run block is really important. And we talk about this until we're blue in the face, that confidence is so important. No one is going to tell me that when Theo Johnson caught that first ball, he didn't take a sigh of relief. Or when Marcus Bowe got through that first snap and said, okay, I can do it. He was fine out there. When Russell Wilson was realizing that he had time in the pocket, okay, I'm good, I can take a breath. When Malik Neighbors was realizing he could beat out the double teams and make plays and do what he needs to do. This stuff builds confidence. It does. So I think there's a lot of good that came from this game, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now, what they need to do is stack it together and repeat it this week against the Chiefs. Andy Reid is a different beast than Brian Schottenheimer. So, we're going to discuss this later in the week. But I think it's a really good showing. It gives me a lot of optimism, the fact that the offense specifically was able to punch back the way that they could after week 1, after looking so embarrassingly bad in week 1 that they were one of 3 teams that did not score a touchdown, to now go into this game and score not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 touchdowns says a lot. Again, we have to see the continuity. They have to do it consistently, but I know this would be a very different conversation between all of us if they went into the Cowboys and didn't score a touchdown, or the final score is 40-7 or 40-10. This is a different conversation. So I know obviously it sucks that they lost. It does. We'd all be feeling very different if they were 1-1, but the season is not over, even though they're 0-2. There's life in this football team. There's talent, there's progress, all things that we need to see. Now it needs to carry over into week 3. Now, the defense, I know there's a lot of problems here. We're going to focus on the good today because there was a lot of good. Drew Phillips, fantastic interception. Again, the offense needs to convert there and get points on the board, and then we're not going to overtime. But still, Drew Phillips, overall great game. Had some nice tackles for loss, had the interception, had a flag like everyone else. That needs to be cleaned up next week, but overall great game from him. Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter played more snaps this week. They played 30 snaps together as opposed to 8 last week. In those 30 snaps collectively, they had 10 pressures and I think it was 2 quarterback hits. I'm not 100%. Was it 2 sacks? Either way, when those 3 are on the field, they can put pressure on the quarterback, and that needs to be increased this week. Again, Shane Bowen, it's not rocket science we're talking about. So come on, get them back on the field. Okay, I want to talk about Abdul Carter for a second. He rushed the passer 47 times versus Dallas. The most on the team was Burns with 51. Carter recorded 4 pressures, 3 hurries, and a stop in the game. And speaking of Drew Phillips' interception, he earned an assist on that interception because he was in Dak's face wreaking havoc, which is something that he does so well. Also, I want to talk about Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. I think that Kayvon Thibodeau has been getting the shit end of the stick a little bit. And I know that, he's in a contract year. The wrestling thing, I think, helped. He's done a really good job, and he has especially shown up really well on the film. And I think that he deserves some credit because I know a lot of fans have been down on him going into this year. I have also given him some crap, but I will also give him credit when it's due, which is after week 2. 5 pressures, 3 hurries, 1 sack, 5 stops in the run game, and 4 tackles. Kayvon had a great game. Same thing with Brian Burns. I love Brian Burns, MVP of this team. He earned that captain that is on his chest. He's incredible. 5 pressures, 4 hurries, 1 sack, 3 stops in the run game, and 2 tackles. Brian Burns now leads the team with 3 sacks in 2 games. He is a cornerstone of this defense, did an incredible job, and I only expect him to be able to build on that. Next up, I want to talk about Cordell Flott, who also had an excellent showing this game. Had 2 pass deflections, one of them on a 3rd down when it mattered incredibly, another one in the red zone. Cordell Flott is a guy who is going into this season, obviously a lot of concern from all of us, and he's not perfect by any means, but he has done a damn good job out there, and he has earned those reps that he's gotten. And, I'm sure that the Giants went into this game with the same plan a little bit that they did last week, knowing Shane Bowen, that they were going to do that rotation on 3rd down, where they were going to put Tay Banks in there and have Cordell Flott on 1st and 2nd down. They didn't do that every time this week. Cordell Flott was earning those 3rd down reps, and he made some really big plays. Now, again, not perfect, some issues there, but he played better than Tay Banks. And when he's getting those snaps in the game, he's making plays when it matters. And that's really important, especially from a guy who's in a contract year, who we're all worried, like, between him and Tay Banks, here we go. CeeDee Lamb didn't even have a touchdown yesterday. Even when Tay Banks was giving up a lot of plays to him, didn't have a touchdown. So this defense, I think collectively did a decent job. They couldn't get a stop when it mattered most. In my opinion, a lot of that has to do with Shane Bowen and the way that he is scheming this defense. And I understand that he doesn't want to be Wink Martindale, and he doesn't have to be Wink and blitz 50% of the time and live and die by the blitz. But when you have your 3 edge rushers on the field and they are recording pressure after pressure and sack and quarterback hit and this and that, it's working. Why are you straying away from that and going zone and having no one in the middle of the field when Jake Ferguson has already been destroying you guys up until this point? The guy almost had 100 yards. So, yes, the players have to execute. Yes to that. And they need to not get stupid flags. But Shane Bowen has to adjust the scheme for the talent. And when you have 3 really good edge rushers, you have to blitz more. I don't care if you don't want to. I do not care. You're going to get fired. So just start blitzing more, okay? What's the holdup? So anyway, I think there was a lot of good that came out of this defense. Unfortunately, not when it mattered, right? They didn't get the stop on 2nd and 10 when there's 19 seconds left and they're up by 3. A problem that I have is that all the collective fan base who's watching this game, we all know that Aubrey only needs 65 yards, maybe 68. He's good. They're inside. There's no wind. There's nothing blowing around. There's no sun in your eyes. There's nothing to affect how this kick is going. So you didn't think it was a good idea to blitz on 2nd and 10 with 19 seconds left in the game? Okay, Shane. Okay. Anyway, I want to end it on the high note. A lot of good play out of some of these defensive players. We had our 4th string linebacker in the game, and obviously still had some issues there. So my hope is that the Giants bring in a new linebacker this week because they desperately need one. But overall, again, 37 points this Giants offense put up. Malik Neighbors, unbelievable. Wan'Dale Robinson, great game. Cam Scattaboo, what's his name? Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. Okay, a lot of good. I feel like for the first time since last week, or even since last year at this point, it feels like they're starting to click together a little bit, this team. Like, we're starting to see it on the field. So let's hope it continues, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Giants news and updates.